13 January. Welcome to the President's Daily Brief. I'm Mike Baker, your eyes and ears on the world stage. Now, if you caught our special PDB announcement from yesterday, from Sunday, you'll know that starting tomorrow, I'll be on an epic 4-week trek through the deserts of Saudi Arabia and Jordan to raise awareness for the UK Special Forces Benevolent Fund. 5 members of the UK Special Forces Club, including myself, 10 camels, and you don't often hear that, and an amazing support team, an incredible support team. We'll be covering 700 miles as we recreate the famous 1917 crossing of the uncrossable desert by a small Arab army accompanied by Lawrence of Arabia, T.E. Lawrence. Now, they went from Al-Waj in Saudi Arabia to Aqaba in Jordan. While I'm away, good friend Mike Slater has graciously agreed to fill in. He'll be guest hosting here on the PDB to ensure that you stay informed and up to date. Now, if you want to learn more about the trek, and I hope you do, and about the UK Special Forces Benevolent Fund, please check out the website. That's at www.sfcbf.org. That just stands for Special Forces Club Benevolent Fund. www.sfcbf.org. And you can follow along on the trek's progress with Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube sites. Just search for SFCBF Trek. All right, let's get briefed. Today, we start in Russia, where the captured diary of a dead North Korean soldier reveals the reality faced by Pyongyang's troops on the front lines of Vladimir Putin's war against Ukraine. Later in the show, hopes are once again high, they just keep going up and down, that a ceasefire in Gaza is on the horizon, with Israelis reportedly caught off guard by Hamas's flexibility during the latest hostage talks. Plus, an update on Trump's pursuit of Greenland, with reports that Denmark has privately reached out to his team, signaling openness, perhaps, to boosting security on the island or increasing the U.S. military presence there. And in today's back of the brief, the latest from Los Angeles, where wildfires have raged for 7 days and the death toll continues to rise. But first, today's PDB Spotlight. Ukraine has released details about the North Korean soldiers captured on the front lines of Russia's war against Ukraine, shedding light on the grim reality faced by Pyongyang's troops. Ukrainian President Zelensky and the SBU, Ukraine's counterintelligence agency, announced late Saturday that 2 wounded North Korean soldiers were captured in the Kursk region and taken to Kyiv for medical treatment and questioning. According to the SBU, neither soldier speaks English, Ukrainian, or Russian. So South Korea's National Intelligence Service, the NIS, is assisting in communications efforts. One of the soldiers told Ukrainian authorities that he was born in 2005 and has served as a rifleman in the North Korean military since 2021. He claimed that he thought he was being deployed for training, not to fight in Ukraine. The second soldier, born in 1999, has been a sniper reconnaissance officer since 2016. His testimony corroborated the account of his younger comrade. Adding to the mystery, one soldier carried a fake Russian military ID issued to a man from Tuva, that's a remote Siberian region, while the other had no identification at all. Ukrainian officials suggest this was an intentional attempt by Russian forces to obscure the identities of their North Korean allies. The captured soldiers revealed they received just 1 week of training and coordination with Russian forces before being deployed to the front lines in Kursk. Now, that is consistent with growing reports about the hasty and reckless use of North Korean troops by Russia. More insight into life for North Koreans on the battlefield comes from a diary taken off a dead North Korean soldier back in December. Now, the Wall Street Journal reported that the diary includes a crude stick figure drawing that shows one soldier, labeled as bait, standing still to attract a drone, while 2 others attempt to shoot it down. One more indication of Pyongyang's and Moscow's disregard for individual lives. The dead soldier's writings also reveal the depth of his psychological conditioning. In one passage, he wrote, quote, "Even at the cost of my life, I will carry out the Supreme Commander's orders without hesitation. I will show the world the bravery and sacrifice of Kim Jong-un's special forces," end quote. Drone footage from Ukrainian special forces shows North Korean soldiers advancing across open fields on foot, wearing dark camouflage that, of course, contrasts against the snowy terrain. They appear to lack armored vehicles or artillery support, highlighting inadequate training and poor integration with Russian forces. Military experts describe their tactics as dangerously outdated, resulting in high casualty rates. Zelensky stated that some 4,000 North Korean soldiers have been killed or injured since December. U.S. officials estimate that more than 1,000 died in just the final week of the year 2024. Reports suggest that many North Koreans prefer suicide to capture, with some reportedly being finished off by their own comrades when wounded. All right, coming up after the break, renewed hope for a ceasefire in Gaza, with reports of surprising flexibility from Hamas in hostage talks. And an update on Trump's pursuit of Greenland as Denmark signals openness to boosting security on the island. I'll have those stories when we come back. Welcome back to the PDB. Turning to the ongoing negotiations between Israel and Hamas, Prime Minister Netanyahu dispatched a delegation to Doha to finalize a potential hostage and ceasefire deal with the terror group this weekend. Now, the move follows signs of cautious progress in negotiations and urgency by President-elect Trump to secure an agreement before his inauguration. According to the Times of Israel, on Saturday, Netanyahu's decision followed consultations with Israeli security chiefs, officials from the Biden administration, and members of Trump's transition team. Mossad chief David Barnea and IDF hostage negotiator Major General Nitzan Alon led the Israeli delegation, while Trump's Middle East envoy Steve Witkoff has been actively engaging with mediators in Qatar, describing the president-elect's resolve to finalize the deal, quote, "within days." Last week, the president-elect warned Hamas, quote, "If those hostages aren't back by the time I get into office, all hell will break out in the Middle East," end quote. CIA Director William Burns underscored the critical nature of these talks, describing them as, quote, "quite serious," and forecasting a possible conclusion, quote, "in the next couple of weeks." Burns credits the bipartisan cooperation between the outgoing and incoming U.S. administrations as contributing to tangible progress. The first phase of the proposed agreement would reportedly involve the release of 34 hostages, some deceased, paired with a temporary ceasefire and expanded humanitarian aid to Gaza. However, the negotiations hinge on a contentious issue: the number of Palestinian prisoners to be released in exchange. According to a Hamas source quoted by a Saudi outlet on Saturday, and of course there's nothing more reliable than a Hamas source, the terror group demonstrated unexpected flexibility during these negotiations, surprising, reportedly, Israeli delegates by agreeing to submit lists of living prisoners, adding 11 prisoners to the list at Israel's request during the latest discussions. Among the key concessions, Hamas is said to be open to accommodating temporary Israeli military presence in the Philadelphia corridor, the closure of the Rafah crossing, or the positioning of Israeli forces between North and South Gaza. However, the sources stressed that these concessions were contingent on guarantees that displaced residents would be allowed to return through an electronic checkpoint, which is expected to last 6 to 8 weeks. A second phase has been tentatively outlined, focusing on expanded aid and gradual border reopenings under international oversight. This would build upon the 2005 agreement involving coordination between European monitors, Egypt, the Palestinian Authority, and the U.S. The terror group insists on these guarantees to ensure long-term implementation and a pathway to a permanent ceasefire. For Netanyahu's government, the stakes are extremely high. The prime minister is under intense pressure to secure the return of all hostages, both living and deceased, while navigating domestic backlash over Hamas's demands to release thousands of Palestinian prisoners. In an interview with a Palestinian outlet, the head of the Palestinian Prisoner Affairs Committee, who represents those held in Israeli prisons, claims his estimates indicate that actual number of Palestinian prisoners to be released will be more than 3,000. His claims follow Israel's insistence on including additional hostages on the release list, including wounded soldiers. However, in the interview, the committee head claimed Israel would have to release more terrorists serving life sentences for hostages who do not meet the humanitarian category. That would be women, children, and the ill. All right, shifting to an update on the United States potentially acquiring Greenland. Did you ever think you'd hear that sentence? Denmark reportedly sent private messages in recent days to President-elect Trump, expressing willingness to discuss bolstering security in Greenland or expanding the U.S. military presence on the world's largest island. As we reported here on the PDB, Trump declared during a wide-ranging press conference last week that he considers Greenland, a Danish autonomous territory, to be a vital asset for U.S. national security. The president-elect mentioned he would impose tariffs on Denmark if they refused his offer to sell Greenland to the U.S., and did not rule out the use of military force to take control. While Denmark retains responsibility for its defense, Greenland's significance has grown in recent years, opening new Arctic sea lanes and sitting atop vast deposits of valuable minerals. Trump has repeatedly underscored the island's critical role in national defense, citing its potential to counter growing Russian and Chinese influence in the Arctic. Naturally, Trump's allusion to military action, well, that alarmed European allies, as you might imagine, with Denmark scrambling to avoid a public clash with the incoming administration while quietly addressing Washington's security concerns. Two sources close to the situation reported to Axios that Copenhagen conveyed to Trump's team that while Greenland is unequivocally not for sale, they are open to exploring other avenues of collaboration, including enhanced military cooperation. It's important to note that the U.S. already operates a key military base in Greenland under a 1951 agreement with Denmark. The outpost is crucial for missile defense and monitoring the Arctic primarily from Russian aggression. Danish officials are exploring further investments in Greenland's defense infrastructure in consultation with the Greenlandic government to deepen ties with Washington. Trump's rhetoric prompted high-level talks on Friday in Copenhagen between the Danish Prime Minister and Greenland's Prime Minister. In a press conference after the meeting, the Danish PM emphasized Denmark's commitment to dialogue with the incoming U.S. administration, requesting a formal meeting with Trump. Greenland's Prime Minister echoed his country's openness to business partnerships but rejected any notion for sale. Adding intrigue, Donald Trump Jr. visited Greenland last week. Now, this visit, combined with the president-elect's rhetoric, has left Danish and Greenlandic officials uncertain about how seriously to take Trump's intentions. Meanwhile, current Secretary of State Antony Blinken under the Biden administration sought to downplay Trump's idea of U.S. control over Greenland, saying, quote, "It is not going to happen." Now, Blinken then added, "Of course, I'm out of a job in 1 week, so maybe I shouldn't talk about what is and isn't going to happen this year." End quote. Okay, that last part I just made up. Fair enough. Now, the idea does actually have its advocates. James Stavridis, former NATO Supreme Allied Commander, described Greenland as, quote, "a strategic gold mine for the U.S., emphasizing its location at the top of the North Atlantic." Speaking in a radio interview on Sunday, Stavridis stated, quote, "It's not a crazy idea. We could do an awful lot in terms of business, investment, box out the Russians, box out the Chinese, and work very closely with Greenland," end quote. Now, Stavridis added, quote, "It doesn't have to become the 51st state, but it can certainly be an economic objective for us," end quote. With the Arctic becoming increasingly contentious, Greenland's strategic value, well, it does remain undeniable. Whether Trump's rhetoric translates into action, potentially making him the first U.S. president in 8 decades to secure new territory for the U.S., well, that, of course, remains to be seen. Okay, coming up in today's Back of the Brief, firefighters in Los Angeles continue battling deadly wildfires, with the first responders from across the country joining the effort. More on that when we come back. In today's Back of the Brief, I want to provide the latest on the wildfires ravaging Los Angeles. After progress over the weekend in containing the Palisades and Eaton fires, firefighters prepare for a dangerous resurgence of high winds that could threaten new areas. Starting with the Palisades fire, which is wreaking havoc across the affluent Pacific Palisades enclave and neighboring coastal areas, The blaze has consumed over 23,700 acres. Containment crept up to 11% on Sunday. That's up from 8% on Friday, thanks to a brief reprieve from high winds and a rise in humidity. The fire has destroyed over 5,300 structures and continues to threaten iconic landmarks along the Pacific Coast Highway, ranking among the most destructive fires in state history. Inland, the Eaton Fire left a similarly devastating trail, scorching over 14,000 acres in the Altadena and Pasadena areas. Though containment jumped to 27% over the weekend, up from just 3% on Friday, the fire's erratic behavior leaves over 39,000 structures at risk. More than 105,000 residents in Los Angeles County are under evacuation orders, while an additional 87,000 are on evacuation warnings. According to the Los Angeles County Medical Examiner, the death toll from the fires has climbed to at least 16. As firefighters race against the clock to increase containment, the National Weather Service issued a red flag warning beginning for Monday evening through Wednesday, citing low humidity and forecasted gusts of up to 65 miles per hour, which of course adds to the potential for fire explosiveness. The Santa Ana winds, while less severe than last week's, pose a renewed threat to containment efforts. The National Weather Service's officials described the expected conditions as, quote, extremely dangerous. On the ground, nearly 8,000 firefighters are battling the Palisades and Eaton fires, with reinforcements arriving from neighboring states such as Nevada and Oregon and Idaho. Over the weekend, international allies joined the fight as Canada offered its air tankers and battle-tested wildland crews from Ontario, Quebec, and Alberta. Additionally, Mexico also dispatched fire crews to Los Angeles. Together, these firefighters are working tirelessly to protect densely populated neighborhoods like Brentwood and Encino, which narrowly avoided disaster from the Palisades fire over the weekend. And the cause of the fires, well, that remains under investigation. Meanwhile, residents and first responders alike face a tense and uncertain week as Los Angeles braces for renewed high winds. The next 72 hours will be critical for containment efforts. And that, my friends, is the President's Daily Brief for Monday, 13 January. If you have any questions or comments, please reach out to me at pdb@thefirsttv.com. And I hope you had a chance to watch the latest episode this weekend of our PDB Situation Report. If not, you can catch it along with past episodes on our YouTube channel at President's Daily Brief and wherever you get your podcast stuff. And to listen to the show ad-free, well, should you so be inclined, become a premium member of the President's Daily Brief simply by visiting pdbpremium.com. Told you it was simple. I'm Mike Baker, and I'll be back later today with the PDB Afternoon Bulletin. Until then, stay informed, stay safe, stay cool.
Hey, thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit that like button and leave a comment, a really positive, nice, and kind comment. That would be appreciated. And if you're not already subscribed to our channel, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss any of our daily updates.